I guess we can get into it. Everybody ready to go and talk about leaky gut? We have lots to talk about because in my normal Neal fashion, I over prepared and got too much stuff ready. Today's topic, of course, is going to be leaky gut with a subtitle. Wait, what's leaking? So the housekeeping that we'd like to take care of is, of course, you can rewatch this at any time. I'm going to put the slides up shortly after. We might even send to you guys these slides if I can get my act together. Anything that I say that I'll share with you, we'll post on the website as soon as we can. If you have questions, ask right away. This little AT&T headset looking thing tells me when you guys have talked, so I can kind of see what's going on over there. We're a family here, but this whole thing going on with my receding hairline, I want you all to know that I will be getting hair plugs, and you guys cannot make fun of me because this is just, I had to turn off one of the lights because it was just like glistening through. So I'm going to stop looking at that. I'm just going to cover up my face maybe. How about that? Boom. All right, there it is. So we have lots to cover tonight, and so let's get started here. So if you don't know who I am already, I'm a pharmacist. I have a practice in the most famous small town in America, Woodstock, New York. I'm a holistic pharmacist, and I've been practicing for over 15 years in a wide range of clinical settings. I've got extensive self-learning and practical training in natural products. I might be skipping through some stuff. So let's talk about what a holistic pharmacist is, because that's largely a made-up term. So the way that I define it is that my goal isn't to push drugs. It's quite the opposite. I want more people off medications, only using medications when they're appropriate, but otherwise we should be using nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep, and yes, sometimes supplements to prevent as much disease as possible. I also know that our current healthcare system is a bit jacked up, but I know that medicines, doctors, and the traditional stuff is a part of it. As I've said before, we can't live our best lives without all three pieces: lifestyle, supplements, and medication. I'm not a real expert, though, so I'm not a researcher, as you would say. I'm a practitioner. I have unique experience and extensive knowledge. Most importantly here, I'm a translator and an advocate. My process is applying my disciplined rigor almost obsessively to the quality of the products and the information that I recommend. So just take this with a grain of salt. I'm not the one doing research around leaky gut. I am helping you understand what leaky gut is. In general, I'm a big mouth professional who gets a little crazy and asks the tough questions. I have to put this up here, and I think it's important that we all know this, that we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here today. I don't want you to do anything without talking to a healthcare professional, preferably your doctor. You shouldn't change anything about your life until you've spoken to a qualified healthcare provider about the things that you've learned and try to implement them into a quality program. So I'm not telling you that you should believe anything you read on the internet. In fact, just the opposite. Take my information with all the other information that you have in your life and bring it to an expert that's closest to you to turn it into a good plan and program for you. My responsibility here is to be responsible. There's going to be no outrageous claims. There's going to be real practical advice around the products and what the current evidence shows. In other words, no BS. If there's no questions, I will say that I do have a poll there for you. If you click on the poll tab, I'm asking you what your gut looks like. A lot of people are saying that their gut's okay. Somebody's leaking. Oh, that's not good. We'll have to get that fixed before the end of the conversation. All right, so let's go back over here. So your gut is a doorway to good health and a barrier against the bad. Good gut health practices should be your top priority. What we're going to cover today is what leaky gut is. We're going to talk about leaky gut protocols, myths and misinformation, and how about that picture? I mean, come on, like what the heck here, huh? Look, check this out. Look at that. I got a drum thing. Isn't that cool? I got a laugh track. There you go. All right, enough of that nonsense. Okay, so leaky gut syndrome. When you type it into the Google machine, this is what comes up. It's an epidemic that's the cause of chronic illness, like chronic Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, or chronic fatigue syndrome. It's a growing epidemic among chronic disease sufferers. It almost sounds like a movie preview, right? And I actually turned it into one, something devastational. Not Independence Day, Leaky Gut Day. It's coming for you. Watch out. But what we really need to know is what exactly is this leaky gut syndrome that makes people so worked up to think that it is the end of all times. And quite simply, leaky gut, here it comes, it's not real. Leaky gut syndrome is not a real thing. It's not an accepted medical condition. It's not a recognized or official diagnosis. And there's not enough evidence to prove it's a legitimate issue at all. And some of you are thinking, oh my God, I think Neal just catfished me, pulled a little bait and switch on me here. This is supposed to be about leaky gut, and now he's telling me that it's real. And, this is kind of what I do here. So the purpose of this is not to be dismissive of anybody or anybody's belief around leaky gut, especially as you are the consumer. I would never, ever do that. I want to arm you with the best information and the best answers to your health questions, but I am going to rag on those spreading misinformation because we need accountability. And many unlicensed practitioners don't have that. So we are going to beat up the baddies here. Because truthfully, leaky gut is real. If you notice, there's a slight difference. So let's talk about this. So there is a real issue with your gut where it can leak, okay? And there are negative consequences of long-term increased gastric permeability. So leaky gut is not a real thing, but increased gastric permeability is a real official thing that's going on. It's not the root of all evil, though, and it's not a problem for most of us, all right? There is a difference between leaky gut syndrome and leaky gut, all right? And let's explain by teaching you about your gut. This is a picture of your gut. Your lining of your gut is a one-cell wide barrier that protects the outside world from your bloodstream and your body. Each of those cells are tightly packed together, and there's a little barrier called a tight junction. And that tight junction acts as the doorman that will allow or not allow compounds to absorb into the bloodstream. There are different pathways for things to get into the bloodstream, as it shows here, the transcellular pathway, meaning it has to go through the cell membrane, through the cell, and then through the other side of the cell membrane. That is a long, lengthy process and requires small compounds that can fit within the channels. The tight junction itself, the paracellular or in between the cell pathway, also allows only small molecules, and it's kind of like the doorman. It only allows a few people to go by, but in general, it keeps it nice and tight. If you had a scenario where the tight junctions weren't working appropriately, you could have larger molecules and you could have more free passageway between the gut and the bloodstream. So the leaky gut syndrome theory is basically saying that there's something out there that turns your gut into Swiss cheese. So there's a few reasons that people point to in this whole scenario. They tell you that you have an overgrowth of yeast or bacteria. I've got the candida is what a lot of people say. And that's just kind of like finger pointing. So candida is a part of our normal flora and it's present there. It is very, very rare that you'll actually have a true candida overgrowth, especially internally. And if you did, it would be a pretty serious problem. They point at antibiotics, poor diet, and food allergens is always a big cause of why you have leaky gut. Gluten is blamed almost solely. Toxins, all the toxins, pointing to all the environmental things that we're getting exposed to as the thing that turns your gut into Swiss cheese. The key point here is that they want to blame something. So there's something in their theory that causes your gut's tight junctions to blow wide open. All right. Partially digested foods called macromolecules, also microbes like viruses and bacteria, and then the toxins, the bad things that are in the gut, enter the bloodstream where they normally wouldn't. Okay. This is all the theory. And as a result of this, you start having general GI problems like abdominal pain, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, all of those things. And from there, it progresses. Those things that have entered your bloodstream now trigger an immune response. Your body overreacts to the toxins, and then you are in this inflammatory state that leads to a number of problems. Sounds pretty good. And they basically say that I keep saying lucky gut. Leaky gut is the reason that your whole life is falling apart. It causes allergies, brain fog, memory loss, mood swings, migraines, eczema. It's the reason that everything's wrong. But this is the part that is most disheartening for me, and the part that I have the biggest problem with, is that they then say that it causes anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, autism, and cancer. So that's pretty dramatic for anybody. So I like to take a big time out here and just take a look at these conditions here and imagine for a second that the reason that these things exist for some people is because they took an antibiotic, because they have an allergy to gluten. Right? This is and should be for all of you a huge red flag, an absolute gigantic red flag, that so many different problems can be linked back to this one thing that's going on in our guts. And anybody that tells you that, these diseases are caused by something like what we're talking about here with leaky gut, you should definitely take their advice with a grain of salt. Leaky gut syndrome, again, is not real, but the connection between increased gastric permeability and any other condition, so gastric permeability is real, but the connection between that and any other medical condition, especially the ones that I was just talking about, hasn't been proven at all. Okay. The best data around gastric permeability says that we're still in the chicken versus the egg stage. We don't know which one comes first. We don't know if the person has the disease, their tight junctions blow apart, and then you have increased gastric permeability. We don't know which one comes first. It seems, though, that permeability and this leakiness of our gut is a symptom, not a cause of disease. There are things that can increase your risk for gastric permeability that aren't silly things like candida overgrowth. Localized gastric permeability can happen because of alcohol intake, because of NSAIDs, anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil or Aleve. But generalized increased gastric permeability has been shown in chronic inflammatory conditions or immunosuppressed conditions like IBD, infections, celiac disease, HIV, cystic fibrosis, and of course, sepsis will increase your gastric permeability. So if gastric permeability is real, the tight junctions get all goofed up, is there then a connection in the literature that says that because of that, we have these toxins leaking into the bloodstream? So I found an article in 1977 that basically showed that patients with HIV did have waste products showing up in their blood. So stuff that should be in the gut was leaking into the blood. And then there were markers of chronic low stress response. We have somebody with some sort of severe disease, they could get gastric permeability, and that stuff can get into the bloodstream, and then that can cause a low stress response. So that is some sort of connect the dots theory. But the problem is that we're playing too much hopscotch. So at the top left here, we have this increased gastric permeability, or, chicken versus the egg. Something causes the increased gastric permeability. This leads to the stuff going into the bloodstream, which leads to a stress response. So we have some dots connected there for a specific population of people. But then the problem that I have is connecting the stress response to these chronic immune responses that they're talking about. And more importantly, there's nothing that shows that this chronic immune response is what goes to that crazy laundry list of disease. So while it makes sense, all of this stuff, that's not how medicine works. We need to really fill in connect the dots a little bit better, fill in the gaps here. The idea of the stress response leading to the chronic immune response. Again, we have some data there, but there is no data that's saying that a chronic immune response is the cause of autism, for example. So we need more conclusive data before we can make these assumptions. So how does this apply to us, right? That's what you're saying. So stop being a nerd, Neal. So these patients have severe degradation of protective factors. So the people that have increased gastric permeability that leads to this leaking of the gut aren't you. You know, most of us here aren't going to have chronic inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's or have HIV or radiotherapy. This isn't an acute problem. So these patients already have compromised immune systems. So, and even in these severe conditions, there's no evidence that the leaky gut leads to other health conditions. All we know right now is that it causes like a stress response, but it doesn't then cause other problems that we need to then deal with. And any of these people that have these conditions would want to address their bad guts normally, right? There's nothing special or crazy about what's going on. This is just a normal part of how we treat these people. And, you know, just to kind of throw this out here. So I spent a few hours investigating this, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but, you know, I've been doing this for a while, so I know how to, you know, hop around the journal articles. And I was looking for legitimate papers, not stuff that say like leaky gut or toxins or anything like that. And I was playing the reference game. So basically, you know, in an article, they'll say, you know, as per this other research, we have this conclusion. So I kept clicking and going down the rabbit hole. And what I found is what you normally find in poor literature situations is like circular referencing. So they're referencing studies that either aren't saying what they're saying that it is, or they're referencing studies that are then referencing them back. So it's like a bad like Instagram relationship, I guess. So while people say there's a growing body of evidence, that's not true. It's just more and more papers referencing the same things. If anything, there's just a growing body of blogs that are discussing inflammatory leaky gut syndrome. All right, so here's the synopsis. Here's where I'm at. I don't believe that leaky gut syndrome is the cause of all your problems. In fact, it's probably not the cause of any of your problems. I do believe that many of the practices put forth in managing leaky gut syndrome are common sense, but are generally underutilized. All patients, even those without gut issues, will benefit from good gut health practices. So let's get started. Leaky gut syndrome treatment protocol. So we've talked about what leaky gut syndrome is and like what they're trying to tell you that it is and how it's causing all your problems. So let's keep going. What are they saying is the treatment strategy? Does it involve spending lots of money? Yeah, pretty much. But then there is also some gold in them hills. 2 parts good info, 1 part make believe, I would say. So how do you know if you have leaky gut syndrome? That's a great question, right? So there is no physical leaking. There's no spout like I had on that original picture. So what I've seen is that these practitioners have these symptom-based diagnostics that they use. They have questionnaires. So here's an example questionnaire. Is everything in your life going wrong? Do you have lots of money? Now, of course, I'm just kidding. That's not really what it says. But the questionnaires that I've seen were very leading things, focusing on non-specific symptoms. Do you have headaches all the time? You know, do you feel tired? Of course, I have children, so both of those things are true. But again, the theory that looking at the gut first as the primary point of good lifestyle modifications is not a bad strategy. So I'm not saying that treating the gut first is a bad thing. What I'm saying is that this whole process of determining if you have this not real disease is kind of you know, it's like a game of shoots and ladders here. We're just playing games here. But you know, what else can we do to give this whole thing feelings of legitimacy? And what we can do is we can do tests. And of course, I put tests in quotation marks because the tests around leaky gut syndrome are fake. The gold standard, if we can say, if I keep doing air quotes, I'm going to make myself sick. Mannitol and lactose, basically, these are indigestible sugars that they have people eat, and then they collect the urine over a 24-hour period. The lactulose is this big compound, and it shouldn't be able to pass through from the gut into the bloodstream because of the tight junctions. So basically, they measure the ratio of the 2 compounds after the 24 hours, and you have you know, leaky gut. And so that sounds like it would be a legitimate test, but it's very unreliable. Most doctors won't use it at all, and it's not even used in the research to determine if gastric permeability is a problem. There's also this stuff called Cyrex intestinal permeability screening. It's expensive. It's not really telling you a full picture. And the great part was when I was looking for research around that testing, the only papers on it are from the business itself. So it's, Cyrex was, the authors were all employees. So the doctors will also do other GI related health tests on you just to see what else is going on. So they're going to ask you, do you have these non-specific symptoms? They're going to try to do these fake tests that really don't tell you anything. And then they'll do other diagnostics around your GI tract. They'll look at the stool. They'll basically do all these different gigs, but they're not really diagnostic on any particular thing. If I can rant for a moment, as I normally do, when it comes to testing, the question that I always ask is, how does this test help anyone? Does the therapy or management strategy fundamentally change if somebody with GI-related symptoms has a diagnosis of leaky gut syndrome? It doesn't. It's kind of like the guy that has diabetes that checks his blood sugar 6 times a day, and it's always 300 or more. And he just keeps eating cakes and pies and doesn't change his doses at all. There's no point to that test. There's no reason for that test because he's not using that information to inform and change the decisions that he's making. So if we think leaky gut syndrome is a precursor to so many diseases and so widespread, all the treatment should start with leaky gut syndrome protocols, right? If anybody comes to me and they have any problems with fuzzy, foggy thinking or anything like that, I should say, because I'm this kind of practitioner, it's probably leaky gut syndrome, right? These unapproved tests for non-existent conditions give us the trappings of legitimacy. And it just gives us as the consumer feelings of warm and fuzziness because we make that connection. This is a learned habit, a learned behavior. We know that we need to go to the doctor, get the test, take the thing, and then we'll feel better. That's the response that we're trained for, but it's not necessarily true. So if I can end that rant, I can just keep moving here. So when it comes to then, after we've diagnosed this fake disease, we now have to treat it. So what are they going to do to treat leaky gut syndrome? We're going to take the good with the bad here when we talk about this. I want you to look through it like a skeptical lens when we talk about this. But for me, this is where these practitioners, especially the ones online, show their hand. Right? So they're saying essentially, this is a modern epidemic that affects almost everyone, yet the medical industry doesn't know about it because whatever reason, right? Money, and they want to poison you or whatever. But the only way to fix it is with a consultation from me that you have to pay for and products that you can get from me. Right, that kind of shows me what the motivation here is, and kind of shows me what's going on. So the 4 R's. This is how leaky gut syndrome is treated, quote unquote. The 4 R's, which of course are reading, writing, arithmetic, and really got to fix my leaky gut. I don't have my laugh track up, but that's supposed to be a joke. The 4 R's of leaky gut syndrome for real this time are remove, which means get rid of or remove the bad things. That's pretty smart, right? Replace, put back the good nutrients and other compounds that make your gut healthy. Repair, or to reduce the inflammation and improve those tight junctions back to the way that they were before your leaky gut. And then re-inoculate, put back and reinforce the gut bacteria. So this is the treatment modality for leaky gut syndrome. This is what naturopaths and natural alternative medicine practitioners are taught how to do. And again, I'm not going to say that this treatment strategy is bad. In fact, I'm going to say it's actually kind of smart. But this is the theory, so that way you're familiar with how this gets treated. So let's talk about it. Remove, the first R, and you're left with emove. You'll get that later, I think. That's going to be one that's going to take a while. So remove, this first step of the process says, get rid of the malignant toxins. That was one of the quotes I saw. It's very, very scary stuff here, people. But essentially, remove all the unhealthy foods, chemicals, and compounds that are potentially getting into your gut, right? Your gut isn't pulling stuff from the environment. It's not and it's pulling wood into your stomach. You're putting stuff there. So they're saying, stop putting the bad stuff in there. So nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, and all of the problematic foods, stop putting it in there. Also, avoiding environmental chemicals as best as you possibly can, like mold, pollen, allergens, the stuff that's in the air, right? Herbicides, pesticides, PCBs, dioxins, industrial solvents. We want to avoid all of this stuff. And this is excellent advice. We don't need a specialist to tell us to do all of this stuff. This is pretty much common sense. I find it ironic, though, that many who recommend supplements will stoke the fear of heavy metals, but don't do enough due diligence on the products and brands they recommend for the presence of these compounds. Selling products whose raw materials come from foreign countries with poor oversight and high environmental contaminants. And you know that I have a list of these examples a mile long, but I figured I would share a couple. One of my favorite was when we were working with a couple autism care providers in the area. They had recommended, these supplements that were marketed towards autistic patients and patients with autism, and there was found that those products were like peppered with heavy metals, lead and mercury, right? We're spending all of this time trying to get the heavy metals out of their diet, and here we are giving them supplements filled with it. Rancid fish oils, PCBs, adulterants that are synthetic chemicals in these products. So while it's great to say one thing, we want to make sure that we're consistent in this whole picture. Boop, boop, boop. Lucky gut is what you get when the dealer gives you a royal flush. Look at you go. That's a pretty funny joke. I'll use that next time. All right, so let's remove the food. So the food allergens they are blaming as a primary source, again, gluten, dairy, and soy. They hate beans. Legumes, they say they have the lectins in the beans, and that binds to the mucosa of the gut and then makes your life miserable. Inflammatory foods, of course, are a problem, and we're going to talk about those in detail. Processed foods, food additives, food colors, it's all good advice, right? For the most part, I'm not too crazy about the hyper reactivity around the food allergens, but this is really good, solid advice here to get rid of these things from your diet. So let's start with gluten, right? It's blamed almost exclusively for leaky gut syndrome. Gluten, of course, is a protein, group of proteins, I should say, found in wheat, barley, and rye. And if you have a gluten intolerance, a lot of people will have bloating, gas, or irritation. And if you have a true allergy to this, you'll have something called celiac disease. There is a connection between gluten and leaky gut. Patients with celiac disease will have increased gastric permeability. But again, this is a chicken versus the egg scenario. We're unsure of the exact timing. The data that I looked at basically said it's pretty close, but it does seem that the gastric permeability comes second to some sort of insult. We don't have a clear picture what that increased gastric permeability really does and how it contributes to the problems that people suffer with celiac, but it definitely does not lead to autism and cancer and chronic fatigue and all that other stuff that they're trying to make it out to be. Gluten removal is the most effective treatment for somebody with celiac. And once you take away gluten, your gastric permeability goes down, right? Gastric permeability in someone with celiac on a gluten-free diet becomes irrelevant. So the idea that there is a connection between gluten and celiac and leaky gut, none of this applies to you unless you have celiac and if you're not doing a gluten-free diet, right? Common sense. So as is the case, experts are taking an ounce of truth and then stretching it. And they're just playing that hopscotch game. My personal take on gluten is that for celiac patients, as the kids say, you should be gluten-free all day, every day. Be gluten less. Our diets are way too rich in simple carbs, which often are gluten-rich foods. So reducing the gluten-rich foods, not completely eliminating, should be a basic part of a healthy diet. More data is needed, of course, but my assumption is that when we compare gluten-less diets and gluten-free diets in people that don't have celiac disease, we're going to have a similar impact on GI discomfort and outcomes. That's my opinion on gluten. It's not the devil. It's not that great either. Inflammatory foods. This is a very important topic that everybody has to understand because there's such a big connection between chronic inflammation and chronic diseases. There's more and more research being done, and inflammatory foods or foods that trigger inflammatory responses are something that everybody needs to be aware of because this inflammation from our diet can worsen arthritis, heart disease, diabetes, and much, much more. These are the inflammatory foods that you need to be worried about. So sugar and high fructose corn syrup, saturated fats, trans fats, omega-6 in excess, of course. We've been saying this and beating this drum for a while. We don't get enough omega-3 compared to the omega-6. Our ratio should be closer to 4:1 of omega-6 to omega-3, and it's closer to 17:1 because of our intake of grains and all of these other omega-6 rich foods. Also, refined carbohydrates like white bread, these things are the reason that we're fat. It's not because we're eating lots of saturated fat or trans fat. Quite the opposite. We're not eating nearly as much as we used to of those things. We're eating lots of carbs, and that's the reason for all of our obesity. MSG, of course, is another inflammatory food, and obesity itself, if we're overweight, that creates an inflammatory state in our body. So inflammatory foods that you should be avoiding: white bread, pasta, French fries. Fried foods are normally fried in these horrible vegetable oils, and they have all sorts of trans fats and horrible things in them. So you should totally avoid those. Sugar, soda, sweetened drinks, artificial sweeteners, red meat, margarine, fake butters. And does any of this stuff sound like this is bad advice? Of course not. This is all good advice. We shouldn't be eating these things. Okay, whether this is causing us to have a leaky gut or not, it's probably irritating the snot out of our gut for sure, in more ways than one, because mucus is snot, right? So processed packaged foods will normally contain one or more of the inflammatory foods that you must avoid. Anti-inflammatory foods, on the other hand, are tomatoes, avocado, healthy fats like olive oil, the green leafy vegetables, broccoli, nuts, fatty fish, and those blues and reds, blueberries, berries, even pineapples. These are foods that are anti-inflammatory. I didn't put any pictures here because I think you guys all know what I'm talking about when I say these kinds of things. So just for a summary, you can take a screenshot of this, but you should eat these things on the left here and avoid these things. And this is how you get rid of inflammation in your diet, whether you have leaky gut or not. Another thing that they recommend from the remove phase is to do a FODMAP diet. FODMAP diet is an elimination diet. And I'm going to kind of blow through this because it's not really that crazy. But essentially what a FODMAP is a sugar that our body doesn't handle. And that sugar, our bacteria in our gut will ferment them, and it'll cause bloating and gas and water to rush into the gut. So this idea is to get rid of all the foods that contain these small sugars and then slowly reintroduce them back to determine which ones you can tolerate and which ones you can't. And so I think it's a bit extreme for what we're talking about here, but I think that it does have some lessons in here. So FODMAP stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And here's a list of things that contain these compounds. More importantly, there is at the monashfodmap.com, the institute that did a lot of the research around this. They have tables like this that show these are high FODMAP foods and these are low FODMAP foods. So instead of eating asparagus, you should have bok choy, those kinds of decisions. So this is a very, very helpful and healthy chart filled with foods that you just want to eat a ton of. Kiwi fruit, right? Mandarins, this all looks good. So the FODMAP strategy is it's a difficult thing to do, but it's only temporary. There's 3 stages. No apples, sorry, Shar. It's 3 stages. You basically get rid of all of the FODMAPs that you're taking in. So you go through that high FODMAP list and you eat none of them. So you're excluding entire food groups at times, okay? And then after your 6-week period, you're going to reintroduce those foods over an 8 to 12-week period, starting one at a time, one food at a time. So we're going to talk about the one type of FODMAP, maybe the oligosaccharide. And then we're going to talk about that in apples because Charlene wants to eat apples. And then we're going to do that over 3 days, introduce apples at gradually increasing doses over that time. And we're going to monitor how we tolerate it. So basically, we're doing that until we figure out what's our problem and what's not our problem. I think that this has value, not that FODMAP is needed for something like this. This definitely helps out people with IBS and other GI diseases, but it's too extreme for this leaky gut stuff. What is helpful, though, is that this kind of teaches us how to properly do an elimination diet. So if we want to determine if we are having a problem from the foods that we're eating, then the best way is to take 2 to 6 weeks off and then slowly reintroduce that over three days or so. That is a really good thing to understand. But in general, I don't believe that you should be going to just anybody to do the FODMAP diet, and you certainly shouldn't be doing it on your own. You can't trust an unlicensed practitioner who's telling you to remove food groups from entire food groups from your diet. So the FODMAP thing, just want to let you know what it is, but this is part of the normal regimens when they're talking about managing leaky gut syndrome. All right, let's move on. Supplements to help you remove money from your wallet. So anytime somebody says, well, take these supplements, you know, again, I'm trying to teach you to be aware of how to use supplements, how to do it in a smart, strategic manner. I'm going to highlight some of the big problems that I saw. There's a lot of problems out there, but in general, if somebody tells you that taking this supplement is going to treat or cure leaky gut syndrome, that's a red flag right there. That shouldn't be said. You can take things that'll support your gut health, but there is nothing that has been proven to treat or cure leaky gut syndrome or even gastric permeability. That's not a real thing. Okay. And one of the big ones I found is that people are taking chlorella because the chlorophyll that's in the chlorella binds to the toxins like herbicides and pesticides. It doesn't really do that. That would be insane if that was able to do that. That's not how this whole thing works. One of the big ones that I saw was turmeric for leaky gut, and not for its anti-inflammatory properties, because I said, hey, that's pretty great. Turmeric has anti-inflammatory properties. So of course, but no, they're using it because it's an antifungal, antimicrobial, and antiseptic. No, that's not how this works. While turmeric may have those properties in vitro, meaning test tubes, it does not, and there is no data to show that it does that in vivo, in the body. Okay, so using turmeric for anything beyond the inflammatory stuff, using it to rid yourself of toxins or microbes, that is just straight up irresponsible and misinformation. And as I mentioned in the Alzheimer's rant that I just did, the non-judicious use of turmeric is going to be the next oopsie moment in natural products, just like megadosing vitamin C and vitamin D and all this other crazy fads that come along. Turmeric and not using it responsibly is going to be the next problem. Okay, mark my words. So other supplements that help you remove the bad stuff from your diet, they promote colostrum, which is rich in immunoglobulins. And we did a blog article about immunoglobulins. We talked about hyperimmune egg. And while it's true that immunoglobulins will stick to the toxins that are secreted by pathogenic bacteria, E. coli and the like, colostrum does it kind of non-specifically. So I'd recommend, if you were looking to do something like this, instead using hyperimmune egg. That was the GI Immune Plus that we were talking about in our article, because there are small studies that it helps with IBS and IBD symptoms. But mostly it's largely unnecessary, because the immunoglobulins are only going to protect against pathogenic bacteria, and that's not what's causing any of these problems here. So I don't believe that FODMAP is a hope. I just got the question is, so other than the general eat well advice, FODMAP is a hoax. It is not a hoax. I would say that it actually is a great strategy, especially if you have IBS, but using FODMAP outside of that, there's very little data. I think the Monash Institute has some more studies coming around other conditions, inflammatory bowel conditions, but you know, I don't need to do it. You guys probably don't need to do it. But again, from my perspective, the real take-home message is this is how you do a proper elimination diet. Justin, I'll answer your question at another point, I think, and then and leaky goat. There you go, leaky goat syndrome. So in general, my recommendation around this remove part of their protocol is that it's generally excellent advice. Get rid of the processed foods, food additives, food coloring, eliminate inflammatory foods, caffeine, alcohol, cigarettes, gluten-rich foods, bring them down. Don't eliminate them, but bring them down. Get rid of all these horrible chemicals that we're living in, this chemical soup, and then your food and supplement grade or quality matters. This matters. So if I said to you guys, if I did a poll, if I had the time, and I said, hey, how many of you are doing this list perfectly? I would think that not everybody out there is. And so this is a huge opportunity for us, whether we have this leaky gut syndrome or if we're just healthy, trying to be healthy people, since our gut is a doorway to our general health picture. This is crucial advice, and checking off all of these boxes is something that we all should strive to do. But of course, they take some points a little bit too far. Gluten is not the devil, and they are a bit hypocritical about the contaminants and such. Supplementation to remove during this phase is largely unnecessary. So remove is the longest part of the 4 R's. So we're going to blow through a couple of these. Let's go to replace. That means put stuff back, just in case you didn't know that. You're going to do, now that you've took all the bad stuff out, now you're going to put the good stuff back. So this is eating anti-inflammatory foods, increasing your dietary fibers. But more importantly, what they stress here is that there's digestive, that because of leaky gut syndrome, this disease, that are going to be impacted negatively. And those two things are the gastric acid in your stomach and the digestive enzymes that are secreted by your glands. Are super healthy, and you can definitely eat them. And we'll talk about that during the probiotic stage. So the first part is that, okay, you have this leaky gut syndrome. We've removed everything. Now we have to put back the acid because you're not making enough acid. And that's not true. Low gastric pH is not a legitimate issue for almost all of us. In fact, when I was researching acid reflux and that conversation that we're having, low acid in the stomach is a very, very, very rare problem. Even people on megadose PPIs and these drugs that suppress acid production don't have that problem. But if people are looking for a way to put acid back, I'd recommend betaine and pepsin, not to drink acid. And I have to say this, but some people have been advising consumers to drink like hydrochloric acid and other acidic containing drinks. Horrible advice. So betaine and pepsin, and please, if you're visiting Woodstock, you could always get acid another way, you know, if you wanted to. Let's talk about digestive enzymes. The apple cider vinegar is actually a basic thing. We'll talk about that a little bit in another point. So let's talk about digestive enzymes. I want to give you guys a crash course. Sneak peek, tomorrow's blog article is all about digestive enzymes. Digestive enzymes are compounds that our organs and cells of our body secrete to help us break down the macronutrients, the proteins, the fats, and the carbs. Some people will have deficiencies in the digestion. So people with pancreatitis, for example. Lactase and alpha-galactosidase, BINO, and lactate are the two most well-known digestive enzymes. If you haven't heard of those, I think you've been under a rock for a little bit. But they're very famous digestive enzymes that are specific for specific types of nutrients. We require multiple enzymes to successfully break down some of our components. So protein, for example, there are multiple proteases that help break down the proteins that we eat. So when it comes to product selection, then not all digestive enzymes are equal. We care about enzyme activity, not the amount of enzyme present. So if your enzyme says lactase 50 milligrams, that doesn't mean anything. That's the weight of the lactase powder that's in there, but it doesn't say anything about the activity level. So you want to know what the different units of activity are based on the source of the enzyme. So I have, for example, a bottle of lactate, and the unit is ALU, which I'm guessing is Aspergillus lactase unit, is the piece here. So there are all sorts of different units. So for example, this protease uses an HUT. Papain uses a TU. So if you get my gist here, this is our Superzyme. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there are, 10 to 15 different digestive enzymes, and all of them have different activity units because they all work in different ways. So if your enzyme says just 50 milligrams or the weight, that's them misleading you because they're not telling you how much activity those digestive enzymes actually have. So the other piece that you have to remember is that enzymes have to survive the harsh, low pH of the stomach. So there's two ways that you can handle that. You can either enterocoat the thing, or you can use a broad spectrum of different digestive enzymes. And that way, some of them will survive in the GI tract, in the upper GI tract, and some of them won't. So they'll be used at different points of the journey. So a more comprehensive, properly dosed enzyme product is really what you should be looking for. But more importantly, I want to talk about how to take a digestive enzyme. This is one of the biggest points of contention that I have with anybody that's using a digestive enzyme. And we're going to talk about Kool-Aid, but don't eat Kool-Aid because we've just removed it from our diet because of all the sugar and all of the red dye. Okay, but how do you make Kool-Aid? I've got an image there for you. You take the powder and you mix it in a pitcher, and then you stir it until it thoroughly distributes, and you have the nice little Kool-Aid guy that looks all nice and red. When we take digestive enzymes, we want to take them 15 to 20 minutes before a meal for optimum effect. And if you think about it, your stomach is that pitcher. The gastric juices in there are the water, and then the digestive enzyme is the Kool-Aid powder. We need to let the Kool-Aid mix before we put the food in. Okay, taking your digestive enzyme with the first bite is like dumping the powder into the pitcher, not mixing it, and just drinking. Right? So you're going to get some Kool-Aid, but it's not going to be thoroughly mixed. It's not going to be an even mixture. And if you take your digestive enzyme after you eat, which I've heard people do, that's like drinking the water down and then trying to do the cinnamon challenge with Kool-Aid and pushing the powder down. It's going to be too late, and it's going to be difficult for it to get in there to do an optimal effect. So digestive enzymes need to be taken 15 to 20 minutes before a meal for optimum effect. All right, so how does this pertain to our discussion around leaky gut? And it pertains because some people report symptom relief when over-the-counter digestive enzymes are used. But there's no data to say that leaky gut or increased gastric permeability will have lower than normal digestive enzymes. So you can take digestive enzymes because some people say it makes their tummy feel better. But there's no data that says people that have increased gastric permeability don't have enough digestive enzymes. You're probably fine. It won't hurt, but it's probably unnecessary. And recently, there's been studies that show that digestive enzymes in general don't really work. You know, that article comes out about every topic every 3 weeks, right? But that's mostly because of the product variability and the quality issues that we were talking about, not using the right number of units, not having a comprehensive product, not protecting it from digestive juices and enzymes. All right, so let's keep moving. Repair. We're going to It's a smart joke. Repair. Two fruits are better than one. You get it. All right. Nobody gets it. It's fine. No big deal. So to repair leaky gut syndrome is the final step in the process here. They want you to improve your tight junctions. And so some of these interventions are legitimate ways to support the health of the gut and the gut lining. There are things that are not, like these two things, slippery elm, marshmallow root. So they're saying that we need to make that gut lining healthy again. So they're saying that you're going to use these herbal products because they increase the amount of mucus your gut produces. And to that, I say, what? That's really interesting that those products would have that effect in such a targeted and specific manner and wouldn't then increase mucosa everywhere, right? So I don't really believe that this is something that will have clinical relevance. Okay, so slippery elm marshmallow root isn't something that you need to do when you're repairing your leaky gut. So other things that they've recommended is using immune boosters like mushrooms. So mushrooms are great for the immune response. They have anti-inflammatory properties in them. But really, there's no data to connect those two things together. Maybe kinda. You know, DGL, that's something. It's a special type of licorice that takes out the thing that makes your blood pressure go up. But mostly DGL helps out with indigestion symptoms. So it's really largely unnecessary unless you have indigestion. Now, L-glutamine is an amino acid that is used and chewed up mostly by the GI mucosa. And in certain populations, there's data to show that it helps reduce the symptoms and helps repair lining. The doses, though, need to be super duper high. So L-glutamine is an option to help out in this process and is a legitimate strategy to use if we need to repair our gut lining. But most relevant to me is bone broth and gelatin. So we know after a horrible stomach ache, if we have bone broths and such, that it will be very soothing to our GI tract, especially because those cells are taking up those collagen peptides that we get so little of in our diet anymore, and they're using those for the cell structure and then to help replenish the mucosal lining. So we know, and we have lots of case studies and lots of historical use with gelatin and collagen from foods to help out with repairing our irritated gut. And the last is, yes, of course it will. It will help with wrinkles. Unfortunately, there's nothing to help out with wrinkles, except for all the injecting the collagen into your face here. So re-inoculate. So we're going to put the good bugs back in our gut, and we're going to be better people because of it. So we're going to use probiotics to reinforce the gut flora and improve the microbiome. This is a big no-brainer to me. Probiotics are a vital 5 nutrient. We don't get enough of them. And when we do, there's enough evidence, and it's even growing with probiotics, that when we get enough of the good bacteria, there are profound health benefits in specific conditions and for general health. Probiotics, in my opinion, should be used by everyone because they're calorie free. They're consistent doses, and if you have a well-made probiotic, you will have tremendous bang for your buck. I can and will do an entire lecture on probiotics, but for right now, we're just going to kind of talk about the basics. Again, myths and proper usage of probiotics. First and foremost, we need specific strains. It has to have the first, middle, and last name. So it can't just say Lactobacillus acidophilus. It has to say something like Lactobacillus acidophilus LA14. So it's the difference between saying a Ford truck and a 2017 Ford F-150, for example. We know that the 2017 Ford F-150 is the thing that, can haul stuff and do things the best. But all Ford trucks even involve like the little rinky-dinky ones and like the super big ones that can't drive around very well. So we want to get very specific about what we're using, because it's those specific strains that have the specific properties that will matter most to our guts. Most importantly, temperature stability. Does this strain need to be refrigerated or not? A lot of people believe that probiotics have to be in the refrigerator, not knowing that the first time that they go in the refrigerator is when they get sent to the store. Otherwise, they're sent and stored warmly during the entire cold chain, during the entire supply chain. The other attribute that these specific strains give is the potency. So tanks versus archers is the analogy that I use. So does it make more sense to have 10 billion archers or 10,000 tanks? I would say the tanks. So we want specific strains that have high potency, meaning that they have high effect in the GI tract. And this is just kind of hitting on the more common things. So in probiotics, more isn't better. So having 50 strains at 100 billion units isn't necessary, but selecting smart strains and having enough of a dose to have an impact, that does matter. Using a probiotic, taking a probiotic at the same time every day is the most important thing. Consistency matters more over everything. There's no need to pulse probiotics, take time off, or alternate different probiotics. That's all misinformation. Staying consistent is what matters the most, especially if you have a well-made probiotic. There may be a slight benefit to using a probiotic on an empty stomach at bedtime, as the GI tract slows as we sleep, but nothing definite there. So I would just say if taking it in the morning is what gets you to take your probiotic every day, then take it and take it consistently. Around this reinoculation, probiotics is smart. All of this other stuff is kind of silly. They promote herbal products to improve the health of the microbiome, like berberine and herbal bitters and andrographis. So these things are fine, but they do not improve the health of the microbiome. Or should I say, if they did, it's not clinically relevant, especially compared to things that do improve the health of our microbiome, like diet, stress management, and sleep. So the 4 R's, summarized again, are remove, replace, repair, and reinoculate. This thing was created by a functional medicine naturopath, not from a pirate. That's a little joke. All right. Okay. It's not a bad system. It's a good mnemonic, and it's specific to the gut, though. This whole concept, that the whole point of this conversation is that this advice is common sense advice for good gut health. And if we manage this with a whole life encompassing wellness strategy, we're going to have all these benefits, and we don't have to worry about things like gastric permeability. And I have such a system, and we call it the wellness pyramid here. So if we compare the 4 R's to what we would normally just recommend for everybody, not somebody with GI issues, we would talk about making good lifestyle choices. So your diet, getting rid of all the bad stuff, adding in all the good stuff, exercising, stress management, sleep, getting off your devices, environmental stuff, right? Having clean quality air and all of the other good stuff. Then we talk about the Vital 5, the supplements that everybody could benefit from, or I should say the nutrients that everybody could benefit from. So omega-3, it's an anti-inflammatory oil. We don't get enough of it. We discussed that when we were talking about inflammatory foods. Boom, it's there. Protein, collagen, right? And gelatin. And most importantly, probiotics. These are 3 of the Vital 5 that are crucial to good gut health. And then we can experiment all of these other supplements like hyperimmune egg if we wanted to, if we were having GI-related symptoms. So the wellness pyramid is not just about gut health, it's about all health. And by doing this system, we are strategically and addressing and attacking all of these possible things that could be impacting our gut health. The fifth R, review. I think we're running late, so let's boom through this. So no, leaky gut syndrome isn't real. And no, leaky gut syndrome is not the cause of your problems. But yes, increased gastric permeability is real and is a symptom of serious problems like IBD, HIV, or chemotherapy. And yes, there's a real good chance that if you're having a health issues, your gut health may be a factor in the bigger picture. But no, not many of us are executing well on healthy gut practices. And yes, by doing so, you will feel better. There is legitimacy in this whole thing. So common sense gut health recommendations are the core of leaky gut syndrome protocols. Many of these recommendations should be followed by all of us, GI distress or not. We should look to a few potential supplements to help with gut health, including probiotics, collagen, fiber, and even perhaps digestive enzymes. But many of the supplements in the 4R protocols are largely unnecessary. So here's the truth. People feel better on leaky gut syndrome protocols, not because of the herbs, supplements, or tests, because of common sense, comprehensive dietary recommendations and lifestyle modifications. Add in vital nutrients like good bacteria, fiber, and collagen for a winning, gut-friendly regimen. So I will leave you with this thought. If you have any gut health, leaky gut concerns, or wellness-related questions, I'm always available. The advice is free. We are not pushy salespeople. You can buy from us. You cannot buy from us. Whatever you want to do. The phone number to reach me is there. My email is neal@woodstockvitamins.com. You can even chat with me at the chat link at our website. So let's talk about supplement regimen recommendations, because I think some people will want to know what we recommend. So some of this stuff is in our brand. So Probiotic Complete is our go-to probiotic. We're developing our own collagen product right now. It'll be released within the next 2 to 4 weeks. We'll have a big announcement about that, but we found a really great supplier that takes care of the animals like we want to, and the quality controls are there. The testing is coming out beautifully. So that will be released pretty soon. We recommend dietary fibers if you can't get enough in your diet. You can use a supplement. So chia fiber is my favorite. It's very gentle. But we have pills and powders and such. Digestive enzyme, Superzyme is the way to go. This is our old bottle. A little glare on it, just like my forehead. Hyperimmune Egg via GI Immune or GI Immune Plus. You can use our L-glutamine supplement. But if you go to woodstockvitamins.com/leaky gut stuff, it's the common sense recommendations for supplements that could help out with overall gut health, not specific weird conditions. So this is the end. Now it is time for questions. I'm going to just say goodbye and thank you very much for joining us. And I hope to see you next month. I enjoy doing this very much. This is our second one, and we're looking forward to next month. I'm thinking that we're going to talk about throwing away your multivitamin and the misinformation around micronutrients. So we will see you then. Now we're going to go to the question and answer session. So if you guys have questions, why don't you start talking over here? And I'm going to scroll up a little bit. So I was talking about wrinkles. How do you know when you should lower your probiotic dose from 100 billion to 30 billion? My stomach is doing so much better and I don't want it upset again. So that's a personal preference. 100 billion units may be necessary for somebody that has chronic inflammation in their gut or something like that, where 30 billion units could be just for a general health situation. My recommendation would be to try doing every other day. And that would be about a 50 milligram dose, or doing 100 milligrams one day, 30 milligrams the next, to try to lower your dose gradually. Alternatively, you can stay at 100 billion CFUs. That dose, if it's working for you and you've tried to reduce it and it hasn't worked for you, that means you're taking the lowest effective dose. And that's all I want for people, is to make sure that they're trying to take the lowest effective dose of well-made supplements that they know why they're taking them. That's all I'm looking for. So I would say don't push it. Is a spore probiotic like Thrive Probiotic beneficial? Oh, Alexa, we did a great little article about soil-based bacteria, and we are not fans. And by saying not fans, I mean like advocates against spore-forming bacteria. That stuff belongs in the dirt, not in your gut. And there are so many great strains of gut bacteria that have clinical data to support their use that it doesn't make any sense to me that people would be using spore-forming bacteria until you really think about what the reason is. And the reason is they're cheap, they survive, so you don't have to worry about potency, and it's a niche market right now. So it's really a financial thing, the reason that these are become beneficial. How do you know you're getting well-made probiotic? All of them advertise that their probiotic is better. That's a great question. And so my goal is to give people transparency. And I think that's the best thing that I can do is all the time about these products. And I want to eventually get to a point where you don't have to just take my word for it. You can see exactly what I'm looking for and what I'm looking at when I look at these products and what I do to vet them. And that's going to be the only way that you'll know. So until then, you just have to find a provider that you can trust that would be willing to share with you how they vet to ensure the product is a high quality probiotic. In general, there are things you can look at if they're not labeling their strains, like we said, the 3 different names. If they're using milligrams instead of CFUs, which is the active amount of bacteria that are in there. If they're putting strains that are competitive in the same bottle. If they're adding ingredients like FOS and other compounds that can cause bloating. There's labeling things. Are they making claims on the label? So there are some things that you can look at, but in general, what I've been telling people is like, it's just like, do you trust me? So this is one that I sign off on because I've seen enough of the data to know that this is a good product. So that's, I hope, is a good answer for you. L-glutamine and collagen present in bone broth. Collagen will be present in bone broth. That's one of the main proteins that are in there. I believe that you will have some glutamine found in collagen, but it's not a rich source of it. Boop, boop, boop. I don't know what that is. Thank you. Sorry that I was stuttering a little bit here tonight. Lots of good stuff here. Thanks. Love this, but curious about other questions too. Yes, love what you have to say about the spore formers. They terrify me. Yes. I was just diagnosed with celiac and working to heal my gut. Are any of the suggested supplements more important than others with celiac? I would take this as a great case on how to manage your gut. So we're all going to use Chloe here to walk through what we just learned and determine what we're going to do. So again, if we're going to follow the 4 R's, I don't really recommend it because I'm not a pirate, but I would say let's do the wellness pyramid. So let's get rid of the bad stuff. So you, more than anyone, needs to be very sensitive about the things that you're putting into your gut. So when we release these slides, you can even email me maybe after, and I can send you the slides so that way you can start to work on this stuff tonight to get rid of inflammatory foods, to get rid of caffeine and nicotine and all that stuff. Obviously, gluten is going to be out of your diet and out of your life aggressively. So you're going to get rid of all that bad stuff. You're going to get that probiotic going. You're going to talk about the omega-3s potentially to help restore the inflammatory balance of omega-6 and omega-3. And then you're going to, even consider some collagen or something like that, or if you can, preferably eat more bone broth like once a day or every other day. So that's the bottom of the pyramid and the vital 5 that we've covered. And then you're going to just do that. And you're just going to do that. And you're going to do it for like 2 to 6 weeks. And you're going to tell me how you feel. And if you feel great, then we're good. And if you don't feel great, then we're going to start addressing the individual symptoms. We can do elimination. We can remove some other foods in your diet. We can experiment with individual supplements. Maybe we need to try some L-glutamine. Maybe we need some hyperimmune egg. Maybe you need a different probiotic. These are the decisions we would make, but we would do so in a more scientific manner. We would do a little bit more strategically than just kind of glomming everything on here. So Chloe, I hope that helps out a bunch there. So I want to say thank you for coming. You guys will be getting a special offer in your email. If you go to our website, woodstockvitamins.com/leakygutstuff, it has a bunch of different products. If you buy any of them between now and midnight tonight, you can get 15% off with the code LeakyGut15. Don't forget to enter the promo code at checkout, though, because we have a lot of people that forget to do that. So you'll get 15% off probiotics and glutamine and all this other great stuff. So I guess, Tracy, what would you want to know about apple cider vinegar? The idea that it can help out with reflux and such. So here's my thing with apple cider vinegar. I don't think that there's any reason to think that it is an unhealthy food to ingest, especially if you get a high quality one. But I don't think using it for health issues, like to treat specific things, has any real weight. I guess that's the simplest thing that I could say about it. And probably what I would want to do is I'd want to beat that up. So I think you just gave me an idea for a future blog article, Tracy, to really kind of crush the whole apple cider vinegar thing. I know that some people claim that when they use it, it definitely helps out with reflux symptoms. But my whole rap on reflux is you can really treat reflux successfully with natural products. The problem is you can also mask something pretty insidious. So you want to make sure that you're still looping in your doctor to the conversation. So the reishi mushroom spores. So if you want to use any mushroom therapy, my thought is that it has to be wood grown and it has to be hot water extracted. They have to do all the proper tests. You can use reishi mushroom. It has great anti-inflammatory properties. There are definite uses for it and it does have some evidence about its immune supporting properties. But I think that along the lines of like gut health, it would be far down the list of things that I would recommend. So it wouldn't be a high priority thing to try. GI Immune Plus is great. GI Immune Plus, Justin, is hyperimmune egg, as I was talking about, which could potentially help out with that remove phase where it's removing any potential pathogenic bacteria that would be living in your gut. Plus, it has the prebiotic, which is feeding all of that good bacteria. So it's helping keep that microbiome strong, which is another part, the re-inoculate stage. So if we're looking at it through the lens of the traditional treatments here, GI Immune Plus is a great option for people. So Karen, back to you. So Karen was the person that asked about how do I know what probiotic to buy when my physician says that fish oil is fake and collagen isn't going to help you. And this brings up a great point because if you look at this as a spectrum, you have people that put crystals on their steering wheels and they drive with their eyes closed because the crystals are telling them which way to turn. And then you have all the way on the other end of the spectrum, the doctor that says, I'm a surgeon and I'm not going to consider anything else except for taking out whatever organ is a problem for you. And I only want to see big clinical data. And, oh, excuse me. And here we are in the middle trying to make the best choices for ourselves. And we're trying to use food, nutrition, and things that we can buy to make better health choices. And we have our doctor, our trusted expert saying, boo. And I don't blame the doctor for having that approach because of the problems with the natural product industry, the problems with product quality, the problems with the evidence. There's not a lot of good studies on things, and the biggest problem is all of the misinformation. The doctors, they want to see evidence. They want to have larger scale studies, and again, I don't blame them for that approach. So what we would try to do is try to move the doctors more towards the middle. And that's part of what I do when I work with the local practitioners in the area is to say, yes, you have valid things, but what about this data? What about this evidence? What about these scenarios where these things benefit? These are the things that we're considering. So, really what it comes down to is communication here and trying to get your doctor on page. So your doctor may not be your best trusted expert for supplement advice then. But if your doctor knew that you were going to somebody that was responsible and wasn't giving you misinformation, using the weakest bits of evidence to justify selling you supplements, then he may come or she may come around. So Karen, I've got no good answer for you. My thought would be, give me a call and I could see if I can convince you that our probiotics are really good. So Sarah, how's it going? Does a probiotic recolonize the gut in a permanent manner? If you get on a probiotic, there's sometimes problems with getting off of them. There are no problems getting off probiotics. But Sarah, the big thing that we've always seen is that people have a problem. They start a therapy, whatever that be, may be a drug or a nutrient or a supplement or whatever, and stuff starts to feel better. So then they want to get off of it. And the important part to remember is that if you go off of something that made you feel better, you're going to feel like garbage again, right? So there's no reason that you can't go off of probiotics, but the probiotic isn't going to permanently change something in your gut. A probiotic is just, reinforcing the cavalry in waves every single day to ensure that your microbiome is getting those good neighbors and the police officers that I talk about in my analogies. The good guys are rushing into the defense to keep the bad guys away and improve the property value of your gut. And the minute that you stop, then that process stops as well. And you can use lacto-fermented foods. Somebody had asked about that earlier, to introduce good bacteria to the body. The problem is that you're getting a mixed bag of strains and variable dosing depending on how well the product's made. So from my perspective, a consistent, well-made probiotic is much more beneficial. So, and no, it does not help recolonize your gut in a permanent manner at all. So I drink it daily. Should I not be doing that? Yes, no, you should use the GI Immune Plus every single day. Fire cider. What's in fire cider, Melissa? Is that the garlic and cayenne and horseradish and all that fun stuff? Oh, Darcy, I'm going to send it directly to you is what I'm going to do. Darcy. And you're going to post it on your work cubicle if you have one of those. Kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, lacto-fermented foods, sure. I'm not too sure about kombucha. Kombucha ends up being like an experiment half the time, It's like you don't even know what's in there. Kefir is great. Are lectins in tomatoes actually hurtful? Are the anti-inflammatories great and we should matter more? I would say that the natural product industry is really good at demonizing individual compounds or angelicizing individual compounds. So lectins overall, if your diet was exclusively lectins, or if you had some sort of allergy or intolerance to lectins, then obviously you want to reduce those things. But having a varied diet and getting exposed to some lectins via tomatoes is not going to be a negative to you. But what will be a big positive is all of the antioxidants and such that are found in beautiful, colorful foods like tomatoes and such. So, cool. Thanks for sticking around with me here, guys. Oh, garlic, turmeric, ginger, cayenne. So, all right. So let's talk about food versus botanical therapies. So when we take a herbal tincture or supplement, what we're doing is taking out the compounds or groups of compounds that have the effect in the body. When we so we're pulling them out specifically and concentrating them up, so that way you can get a good dose, and then hopefully, because we've studied this or looked at this, that dose will correlate to some sort of improvement in your health somewhere, right? That's what we take a therapeutic thing for. When we talk about taking whole garlic and whole turmeric and whole ginger and whole cayenne, yes, those things are going to have those compounds, but they're going to be a much smaller degree than extracting out the ingredients. This is a gross analogy. I've done this a few times for people in store. So here it is. Let's pretend my kidneys are magical. So there's two ways that I can get you my kidneys in a supplement. I can take the kidneys out, grind them up and turn them into little capsules, and you're getting a concentrated kidney, or I can take my whole body and grind me all up. And if I mix it up thoroughly enough, you're going to get a small amount of the kidneys. So when you're eating those foods like garlic, turmeric, ginger, cayenne, all of those things have anti-inflammatory benefits, antioxidant benefits because of the food. But most of those things are good tasting foods, spices, they're healthy things to ingest. It's a great thing to have varied in your diet, and I'd much rather have you eating those kinds of foods than fried foods, obviously, or any of the things on the list. So the idea of it being some sort of magical cure that's going to change your life for the better, I don't really think so. It's a healthy thing. You should just eat more of it. So, okay, any more questions? I gotta do this real quick. That's it. It's over. Thank you very much, everybody. We will talk to you again.